I feel like as soon as we get into Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, I'm like, well, shit. It's that time of year where I have to start thinking about the following year.
You don't have to, but it's gonna be here at some point.
Well, I mean, since we're, talking about it, might as well start giving some attention to it.
Yes, and I do think that giving attention to it in December rather than in like September or other things that some people do is not for me. I like to think about it closer to 2022, but I don't like to listen, or I don't like to start thinking about it, like December 30th. I feel like that's a little too late for me.
No, I agree. I mean, we're both reflectors, so I think giving us a few weeks to kind of reflect on this past year and maybe start to set intentions for the following year, now is the good time.
Yes. And so before we jump into our intention setting for 2022, how about we see how things went in 2021, shall we?
Well, I even say let's back it up even further. So
watch out now.
Right? So why do you and I prefer to set intentions and not resolutions?
Because I think resolutions are stupid. No,
then moving on.
No, so one of the things that, I love me some Gretchen Rubin. One of the things she talks about being a questioner is that we don't like New Year's resolutions. Like, that's a big clue. And the reason behind it is, well, if I want to do something, I can do it at any point. I don't need, like if there's a challenge of post this for the next 7 days, or 30 days starting on the 1st, like I'll start it on the 5th. Like I can do it whenever I want. I don't have to follow this arbitrary rule. I think that's really what it is. And for me, it's the beginning of the new year, but that doesn't mean that I can only make any kind of promise to myself or do something at that point. I understand it's a good momentum, but I also know a lot of people stop doing it within like 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, I also feel that resolutions are black and white. I, lose that 10 pounds, go to the gym every day. There is no gray area. And as we know, life is full of gray areas. What I really like about setting intentions is it serves as like a guiding focus to help make decisions throughout the year. And this was actually the first year where I actually followed through with my intention, actually referring back to it several times throughout the year. Rather than resolutions, I'm usually really good maybe the first 2 months of, reading a book, every night, going to the gym 5 days a week. After that, I start tapering off and I'm, well, shit. If I've let these two fall off the bandwagon, then screw the rest of them.
Right. And I can see that. So how did that feel to go through the year with actually having that intention at the forefront of your mind?
It was really nice. So listeners, if you remember back this time last year, Cindy and I did our intentions, and my intention was the word nurture. And I really focused on that. Is this job or this client that I'm taking on, is it nurturing my creativity? Is this nurturing my love of learning? Is this nurturing my relationship with my spouse? Is this nurturing my growth or my whatever with my father? I mean, all of these things, I really referred back to it. And what I liked about having a word is it was applicable to almost everything that I did, every decision I made. Again, I would prompt myself, does this nurture whatever situation I'm about to embark on?
Before this year, had you set a word intention before?
No, not at all. And I mean, I always those resolution people where it's like, I would set like a few resolutions, not too many, and I would try to adhere to it. But then by March, I've already forgotten what those resolutions were. And then, I didn't really follow through. But this one, it hit different, and I really did stick to it. So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. What was your word for the year?
My word was play big. And
do you feel that you lived into that intention?
I do. And I also know that my bracelet that I put that word on fell apart. And part of, they're the My Intent bracelets. And part of what they say is like, you're kind of making a wish. And when it comes true, your bracelet will fall apart. And mine fell apart pretty early in the year. And I was like, well, oh shit. Like, damn.
And you did play pretty big this year.
I feel like there's a sound on TikTok that's like, I might have girl bossed a bit too close to the sun. And I was like, yes. But it feels better than trying to make myself small. I'm not not meant to be small, and that's okay. And so I think part of it was really not only playing big, but living big and more self-acceptance than anything else.
What do you think allowed you to live into this intention? Because for me, when you talk about your bracelet, I remember you stamped my word and I actually put it on as a keychain. And that keychain is actually the keychain to my desk, which locks. And so because I work from home and I obviously live at home, I see it all the time. So I felt like it was also a visual reminder, a visual cue for me to kind of pause and think to myself, does whatever it is that I'm about to embark on nurture me in some way? How did you live into, or what prompted you to continue to live into your word?
Well, I think what you mentioned about the word helping you kind of make decision making, it's a filter. And so I've done this for a couple of years now. I've set different words or intentions to kind of have like a theme for the year. And so for me this year, I did have it as a filter, but I think it was more of because it was so ever present in the back of my mind that I made some pretty big, bold decisions that I don't normally do.
Let's talk about like the biggest one that you've done.
Oh, I don't even know which one I would
categorize
as that. Which one do you?
Oh, I would definitely say hello, Gutierrez Law.
Gutierrez Law.
Yeah, I think that's way big.
And I feel like it is, but there's another part of me that's like, well, you know what was bigger? You starting certification, or you going to Costa Rica. Like I had a lot of big moments.
I totally forgot. Like, yeah, hello, talking with your father. Also
huge moment.
Yeah. Okay. So you've had several.
Yeah. It was this year was unexpected, but there was so much transformation and growth that I really did feel like play big was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. And so I really I still love my word nurture. And so even thinking about setting intentions for next year, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can just keep it as nurture. And then I was talking to my husband about it and he's like, but why would you do that though? He's like, you've really embodied it this year to where it's now kind of just like a lifestyle thing for you. It's become a habit. So why not pick a different word and live into that? He's like, you're not going to lose that word nurture, but find a different intention to live into. I was like, God damn it. He's right.
He is right.
It's probably from all the pivotal moments episodes he's been listening to and all that, in terms of empowerment and self-awareness. He's learned it from us. So
he has, but thank you for reflecting it back, Vince, because I do think that it's important to push yourself.
I mean, I know there are no rules, and listeners, if you find a word that really resonates with you and you want to keep it going, that's fine. But I do for me, Vince is right. It really has become a part of how I look at things, how I filter things, like you mentioned. And so I'm a little hesitant to find a new word, but I'm also kind of excited to see how that can continue to help me unlearn things and try new things, take risks. So,
well, maybe what it's become is one of your pillars for yourself, where it has to be part of what you want. And in fact, one of my prior words, it was more of a phrase, was 90%. 90%. And that to me, and I've talked about it here before, is I need to be 90% excited about something. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. And it kind of propped up with me the other day where I was on my walk and I saw a text message from my mom asking me to lunch. And I kind of ended up doing the reverse of it. I was like, well, it wasn't fuck no. So like, I guess I'm in a good mood to see it, because otherwise I'm usually like, yeah, that's a hard pass. And I was like, you know what? No, like that feels good. But it wasn't quite 90%, but it wasn't 90% no.
I also like, just real quick, when after that lunch you sent me a voice note and you're like, well, it wasn't awful. And I was like, well, that's good.
But it's just funny because it is one of those things that pops up in my decision making, especially when I'm deciding to go to an event or not. Like that's probably one of the bigger places where it pops up, and I'm like, if I'm dreading this, the answer is no. Mm-hmm. But if I'm really excited about it, then yeah, like if it's meeting the standard for myself. So you don't necessarily need to let go of it. And it's just something that you've incorporated in your life, but you do get to play around with something else and, see how it fits into how you want to be.
So do you have an idea of what you want your intention to be for next year?
I'm kind of thinking that it has to do more with being, like, the word consistent is coming, but more strategic than anything else. Like, that's really what's coming to the forefront. I've also been reading a lot of books on marketing, so that
Could be influencing
that could be influencing where I'm at right now. But I feel like because of that, and instead of, we'll just say with like social media, instead of just, oh, this is what's calling me, like really making it a focus and being very intentional with what I'm putting out there, what I'm trying to build. So it feels like maybe it's consistency, maybe it's this strategy, maybe it's build. Is this moving towards building? Because if it's not, then you know what, maybe this isn't where my time needs to be. And so, it's been really interesting with reading these materials. And I think I shared this with you off air, my waking brain is like, use all of this stuff for Gutierrez law. Like, here's how you could get clients, here's how you could do all of these things. But my subconscious brain is like, yo, bro, why are we doing that? Like, you're building something else. And so it's, my subconscious is really I'm hitting everything right now. My subconscious is really saying, go with more of the coaching and go with more of this community building with Latin women. That's kind of where I'm at.
That's exciting. I think for me, the word that's been simmering on the back burner for a little bit is like curiosity. And I don't know what that means yet. If that means just remaining curious about people or situations, or I'm not sure. I think I have to filter it out a little bit. Being a reflector just takes me a little bit to maybe ask some questions, which is a great way to start this next segment, which is, listeners, let's all work together to come up with a word for us. So I think the first thing is just starting with some self-reflection. Questions that can like help us prompt is like, what is most important to you? And why is it important to you? And for me, I mean, I just don't want to give up my word nurture.
You're not giving it up.
I know, but that's what it feels like.
You're expanding your vocabulary.
I am.
Your personal, you're expanding your personal manifesto. Your Melissa manifesto has to have nurture in it.
That's true. And so for me, I like to reflect on these questions. I'll actually write them out and start to journal on it and see if there's a pattern. But if you are not a journaling person, I know another great tool to implement is vision board. Cynthia, you've done a few vision boards. I have. How have those worked for you?
They've been really interesting. And so moving into the new office space upstairs, which, it's not really new, but Melissa got it all nice and usable. I moved them up there. So I see them every single day. And that's actually where I do the majority of my coaching right now with my clients. So I actually get to see what I've put together. But what I love about being able to sit down and just kind of see the different words and phrases that are calling me, I can start putting together this visual and really look at it. And, when I've been very intentional. Okay, shut your face. There we go. Sorry, Ron. So when I've been very intentional about it, I can go back and I can reflect on it, and I can be like, oh, I did that. Oh, I did that. And that's a really amazing sense of accomplishment of, hey, there was a version of me somewhere that wanted to run the Las Vegas Strip at night. It took many years, and we both did it, which was awesome. Melissa hated me after that race because I had a ton of energy. But it was that accomplishment, and I'd kind of forgotten about it because I wasn't looking at it all the time. And now that I am looking at these vision boards on a more regular basis, I'm like, oh yeah, just trying to remember there are things that I wanted to keep simple, or organization was a big one that's on the board. And I'm like, like my house is organized like it's never been organized right now.
Facts. I can attest to that.
Yeah. And it feels really good. And it's like, oh, okay, this is nice. And it isn't even necessarily being like a neat freak or anything. It's just, there's more organization, there's more space, there's more opportunity. But it is something that is actually on my vision board right now.
There's actually something to be said about vision boards. So In the work that I do with appreciative inquiry, we have this stage or this phase called dream, and we invite people to get creative. We have flip chart papers, and we have what's called a creativity kit, and we encourage people. And this creativity kit, by the way, it consists of like googly eyes, pipe cleaners, tissue paper. I mean, really get creative. It's similar to vision boarding, but it's basically whatever it is that they would like to go, their dream, their preferred future. What does that look like? And getting as detailed as possible, and then having them either create something on like flip chart paper, writing a poem, doing a dance, whatever it is. There's something to be said about this creativeness. Having visuals, sometimes what our brains do is we shut things down because we're logically trying to see how we're going to make X, Y, and Z happen. But when you're inviting creativity and visioning into it, you're allowing that part of your brain to take a back seat, and you're able to piece together these beautiful vision boards, because sometimes your brain might not always know how to get there. But once you start seeing things, like you talk about, revisiting your vision board, your brain starts to remove those barriers that it once put up. And so what at first seemed impossible, now you start to see some possibilities on how you might start to achieve these things that you have on your vision board. So having a vision board is an excellent way to help your brain teach itself to kind of remove those barriers it puts on itself.
Yeah. And I think even just the focus and putting it out there, it tells your brain, hey, this is something that's important to us. And it goes, oh, okay, this is something that's important to us, and tries to live into that. I just want to add one more thing on the vision boards. I've done a couple different kinds of vision boards, and with different intentions before even setting the vision board. So for example, there was a vision board about things that money could not buy. It's like, it was more of how do you want to feel? And it had, I want to feel more of the sun in nature. I want to feel like I'm dancing more of the time than not. And, so those were the things that were calling to me in that vision board. Like, what did I want to call in more? Right. So, you can almost call it a bit of manifesting, but really it's this intention setting. And then in this last year, I was in a mastermind for a bit, and we did a vision board that had to do with how do we want our professional life to look at. And so it was a smaller board. It wasn't the big picture of your whole life, but just even that focus of here's how I want my money to be. And I just remember that there was this graphic with all of these golden little piggy banks on it. And I was like, yes, that's it. Because I want multiple income streams. I don't want just one big piggy bank. I want all of these from different things. And so I just thought that that was a really interesting filter that you could put on, where you're like, you know what, I don't want to tackle on my whole life. That's fine. Pick one area and you can vision board on that and start seeing how that works for you as well.
I actually think that if I did vision boarding, which I don't, but I think that if I did, that's actually how I tackle life, rather than trying to do all the things, because it can feel exceptionally overwhelming, especially when it comes to setting intentions or goal setting. If you can just focus on finances, on relationships, on self-care, whatever that looks like to you, and just really building a clear picture on that, might feel less overwhelming or daunting, and maybe actually help increase your ability to follow through.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And what's really cool is that once you do that, there's actually ripple effects throughout the rest of the areas of your life. It's hard for it not to impact everything else, even if that wasn't necessarily your initial intention.
I actually think that that's why the intention worked well for me, compared, because it was only one thing I had to focus on. It was one word, rather than however many resolutions I would normally create each year. It was just one word that I would bring forth anytime I needed it as a, like you said, a filter. So that was really helpful. So coming back to you being a coach though, so when you're helping people visioning, I know we talked about where do you want to be and why is it important to you? What other questions might you ask your clients that are maybe looking to get better clarity on where they want to go?
Really, this type of work is in the principle of fulfillment is what really comes to mind, where you're really asking, like, what do you want? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want your friends to talk about you when you're not around? What do you want to leave behind and impact? And you really start getting into the core of people and figuring out how are they living into those values, because maybe they are ignoring them, or maybe they're so buried that they don't even know what they are. And so really it is, that push to reflect on what are the big questions, because I can tell you freedom means something totally different to me than it does to you, than it does to our listeners. And that's okay. But you have to figure out what it is that means to you and why it's important for you to be able to see, am I living into this? Are these metrics almost being met in my own life or in the activities that I'm participating in? So it has more to do with this focus on the being and how you want to be in life as you continue to maneuver through whatever goals you may have. It might be, you know what, this job right now is a good place for me right now because it's giving me the opportunity to grow. It might also be, you know what, this is a good place because it gives me a distraction and I feel like I'm doing something during the day, but I also know it's not my forever home, and that's okay too. So it's really just taking that time to figure out what's my drive and what are my values, and am I leaning into that?
I like that. So you talk about legacy, which to me is something that I feel like I will forever be in search for. And for me, that can seem overwhelming. But it reminded me of another activity that I do with clients, which is, imagine you're in a time capsule and it's 6 months or even a year down the road, and you get out of this machine, like what's happening in your life? Mm-hmm. What are you doing? And so, this allows people to kind of, without going too far into the future, because too far in the future, you're like, well, shit, like I want a 6-figure job. I want my own house. Like, again, coming to what's manageable. So I think if you do like even shorter time frames as 6 months to a year, you come out of this time capsule and you're living the life that you want. What does that look like? What are you doing? Who are you surrounded by? Mm-hmm. And if, again, being as clear as possible, and really just either jotting those down. I always tell people, create like, I've had people create time capsules. I've had people create almost like a newspaper article about like what they're doing in the moment. Mm-hmm. Because again, it gets that creativeness going, but it's also tangible as to where you'd like to go.
Yes, I love that newspaper exercise. I've done that one before on your suggestion, actually.
Thank you.
And it was a lot of fun to be able to just kind of see, this is the headline, but what are we doing now? In terms of the visualization, there is a visualization that I take my clients through. When I do my coaching, it's not like, okay, session 1, we do this, session 2, we do that. Every coaching is very unique to each client, but this particular visualization is one that I find really impactful. And you're basically waking up, much further in the future, but you're being celebrated for something, and all of your family and friends are coming, and I kind of walk you through setting that. And it's like, what are they coming for? Like, what's the celebration about? And, then letters show up and gifts, and, the people are telling you what the impact was that you had on the world, on them. And like, what are they telling you? And a big part of this visualization has to do with the fact that deep down what it is that you want. You just got to give yourself the space to actually think about it and let it come to the surface. I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that we have in our go society is we do not give ourselves space to breathe, to think, to really reflect and say, is this working for me?
Yes, and if it's not working for you, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, don't throw it out. If it's not working for you in the moment, what small thing, because oftentimes it's something small that needs to shift. Mm-hmm. What small thing needs to shift for this to implement the way that I had initially wanted it to? So don't give up, just modify.
Yes.
But what I really like about what we've been talking about so far is, basically we've gone over 4 different ways to help listeners come up with their intention or their word for the year. We've talked about journaling as a way to kind of just get the thoughts out, what is surfacing. We've talked about vision boarding. I really like the idea of looking at specific, having a theme for each board. We've talked about time capsules / newspaper article. It's a 6 months to a year out. What does your life look like? And then the visualization, like what are you being celebrated for? 5, 10 years down the road. I love that.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways that you can go about this. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I'll throw one more in the mix, which is for our list makers.
Whoa.
Yeah, you know who you are. You love making a list. You're like, you know what? I don't want to set an intention. I want to have things that I could check off my list and cross off. And that is doing a, again, I love me some Gretchen Rubin. You do a list for the amount of items that you want to accomplish that year. So it would be 22 things to do in 2022. I've done this one before, and I've done it in a couple different ways where I've made like a little visual, and, you know, I put in my little lines of, you know, what I want to do. And then I look at it every month. And I can go back and go, oh, okay, yeah. And I can't tell you how many times put up the mirror in the office has been on this list, and it still has yet to happen. But then there are some things that you put on there that you can check off right away. And then you feel that sense of accomplishment. And as you're going through the year, you know, you keep it in your planner or somewhere where you're going to look at it on a regular basis, and then you can check those things off. Because again, it's something that you can do. It may not necessarily be a big intention setting, but it can definitely help you feel like you're doing something if that's what you're looking for as well.
I like that. And I think that what you and I have also been doing, which has helped me, is like checking in with each other. So if you have a close friend, a significant other, letting them know what your intention is. Again, for me, it was that word nurture. Cydia knew what it was. Listeners, you knew what it was. My husband, by default, by listening, he knew what it was. So really just checking in. And you and I have even had, I think, a few episodes where we've just kind of talked about, how's it working for you? You know, how is the word nurture being displayed in my life? How am I living into this intention? How might I do better about living into this intention? So I think doing even periodic check-ins, whether it's once a month or once a quarter.
Let's check on that quarterly report. But I love what you're saying there, because I do think that sharing is really what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sharing this with somebody, because you never know when they're going to be like, how does this play into your nurture? How does this play into you playing big? And then you're like, look, motherfucker, I was not thinking about that right now. But it's nice to have somebody who knows, hey, this was your agenda before, and you can say, you know what, it's changed. Because maybe it has, and maybe it hasn't. But having somebody who can reflect that back to you, oh, sometimes it sucks, but it's really
But sometimes
powerful.
I think it's necessary, because sometimes we'll make decisions that aren't in alignment with our values. And we've talked about, you know, setting boundaries, but sometimes we cross those boundaries, and having someone say, okay, but is this in alignment with playing big? Is this in alignment with nurturing? And if it's not, then maybe you're right. You could say no, but most often than not, it's because we're not, you know, we're doing something that's not in alignment with our values.
Yeah, there's this thing about it's called the hedgehog, and it comes from beyond entrepreneurship. And basically, it's you as an organization, you figure out what's your hedgehog. And hedgehogs are really good at like doing one thing. And when other opportunities come up for these organizations, if everybody's clear on what the hedgehog is, but this other great, you know, speaking opportunity comes to go talk to this corporation, you know, in New Zealand, and it's like, this has nothing to do with our hedgehog. Motherfucker, I keep doing this. Sorry. Then anybody in the organization can say, is that in alignment with our hedgehog? And then everybody can be like, damn, no, it's not.
I don't know if I'd say that. It just sounds sturdy. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just the same concept of being able to say, this, you know, is this in alignment or isn't it? Because sometimes we don't want to ask ourselves those questions. We just, oh, well, this will be easier. Oh, this will be a quick buck, or, you know.
Well, I mean, just coming back to what you shared earlier, which is, okay, do I continue to do things for Gutierrez Law, or do I continue to... It goes back to that.
Stay tuned to find out more.
Boom, boom, boom.
So yeah, have fun. Let us know what you
Yes.
decide.
Share your intentions with us. We're going to be posting them on our Instagram at Pivotal Moments HQ. So feel free to go and share your intention with us, and let's all hold each other accountable.
We'll do it too.
Yeah, we will. That's it for this episode. Find us on Instagram at Pivotal Moments HQ for all the behind the scenes and sister-like banter you know and love. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR and Pug Productions podcast.